Picture a violent, raging sea. A massive ship is literally being torn apart by howling winds and these crashing, mountainous waves. People are screaming for their lives. Back in the 1600s, theater crews would literally roll heavy iron cannonballs down wooden troughs just to recreate that terrifying thunder for the audience. I mean, it feels like the absolute end of the world for these sailors. But what if I told you that this deadly storm isn't a natural disaster at all? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping far, far away from those traditional, stuffy classroom lectures. We're going to look at Shakespeare's masterpiece, The Tempest, for what it truly is, a gripping, cinematic thriller rooted in dark magic, bitter betrayal, and the incredibly heavy burden of power. So, I want you to seriously think about something before we go any further. Imagine having the absolute power to destroy the very people who completely ruined your life, the people who betrayed your trust and took absolutely everything from you. Now, imagine they're standing right in front of you, completely helpless, totally at your mercy. Would you take revenge, or would you forgive them? This isn't just some hypothetical thought experiment. This is the burning, intensely emotional question at the very heart of the story we're diving into today. Section 1. The Mastermind's Magical Storm. Okay, so let's dive right into the middle of this chaos. In media res. This terrifying tempest is tearing a royal ship to pieces, right? And the victims crying out in the dark, well, they aren't just random, unfortunate sailors. We've got high-ranking royalty on board. There's King Alonso of Naples, his young son Prince Ferdinand, and a man named Antonio. They are absolutely convinced the ship is going down into the black depths and that their lives are over. But here's the secret. The storm is entirely an illusion. It's this highly calculated, magical trap set by a hidden mastermind watching from the cliffs of a nearby island, a guy named Prospero. And he has been waiting for this exact perfect moment for a very, very long time. Section 2. A History of Betrayal. To understand exactly why Prospero set this terrifying trap, we gotta rewind 12 agonizing years. See, Prospero wasn't always this bearded island hermit cloaked in magic. He was once the incredibly wealthy and powerful Duke of Milan. But he made a fatal mistake. He became deeply obsessed with studying ancient books of magic, completely neglecting his political duties, and blindly trusting his kingdom to his brother, Antonio. Big mistake, right? Because Antonio betrayed him. With the help of King Alonso, Antonio stole the title, forced Prospero and his young daughter Miranda onto a rotting, leaking boat in the dead of night, and just left them to be swallowed by the sea. But they didn't die. They washed up on a mysterious, uncharted island. And for 12 long, bitter years, Prospero has been perfecting his dark arts, just waiting in the shadows for the day his betrayers would sail past his new home. The clock has been ticking. Now, it's time for payback. Section 3. Spirits, Captives, and Invaders. Now, to maintain his iron grip on the island, Prospero controls two very different but incredibly compelling beings. First up, there's Ariel. Ariel is this ethereal, magical spirit of the air. Prospero actually rescued Ariel from imprisonment by a dark witch, and in return, Ariel serves him, casting spells, creating massive illusions like, the storm that just sank the king's ship. But Ariel is a creature of the wind, constantly begging Prospero for ultimate freedom. Then, on the other hand, there's Caliban. He's a rough, earthly being and the son of the very witch who used to rule the island. So, while Prospero acts as a savior to Ariel, to the Caliban, he's nothing but a conqueror. Caliban firmly believes the island is his birthright. He feels his home was stolen from him, which, as you can imagine, leads to a really hostile, bitter, and venomous relationship with his magical master. And this dynamic brings up a deeply relevant theme that scholars have debated for literally centuries. When someone arrives in another person's land, teaches them their language, demands their labor, and takes total control of their resources, who is the real invader? Modern interpretations frequently connect Caliban directly to complex discussions of colonialism, oppression, and land ownership. Now, the goal of this explainer isn't to push any specific political angle, but rather to just point out that Shakespeare was asking incredibly profound, uncomfortable questions hundreds of years ago. Caliban isn't just a simple, snarling villain. He's a captive, fiercely fighting for what he believes is rightfully his. Section 4. Love Amidst the Chaos. While that storm at sea was physically terrifying, it was actually just the beginning of a brilliant, devastating psychological trap. Prospero doesn't just want to drown his enemies, he wants to break their minds. So step 1, he uses Ariel's magic to separate the survivors, isolating them in different, eerie parts of the strange island where they hear phantom voices and see terrifying visions. Step 2, he forces King Alonso to wander the beaches, utterly convinced that his son Ferdinand drowned in the shipwreck, pushing the king into the absolute deepest depths of crushing grief. And then step 3, Prospero subtly maneuvers the younger generation together to test what kind of people they truly are. So Ferdinand, wandering completely alone, grieving the supposed death of his father, stumbles through the brush and finds Miranda. Now, keep in mind, Miranda has lived on this isolated island almost her entire life. She's barely ever seen another human being. So naturally, when she sees Ferdinand, literally the very first guy she's ever met who isn't her aging father or her half-monster servant, she is instantly captivated, and they fall deeply in love. Prospero actually forces Ferdinand to do exhausting, back-breaking hard labor just to test if his intentions are genuine. And Ferdinand, he gladly sweats and toils for her. It's great because this innocent, pure, and immediate love serves as a beautifully striking contrast to the dark, ambitious, and violent politics of their parents' generation.
Section 5. The Ultimate Choice.
While the kids are falling in love and finding hope, the adults are facing a terrifying reckoning. The psychological trap finally springs shut. After 12 years of crushing isolation, 12 years of boiling anger and plotting in the dark, Prospero finally has his brother Antonio, the man who ruthlessly stole his life and titles, completely cornered. Desperate, helpless. He also holds the fate of King Alonso. This is a man who is now terrified, broken by grief, and completely powerless against Prospero's terrifying magical abilities. I mean, Prospero is practically a god on this island. He commands the weather, the spirits, the very ground they walk on. He can inflict any torture or punishment he desires. Which brings us right back to that very first question we asked. The ultimate climax of this story isn't a massive sword fight. It isn't a magical battle with lightning bolts. It's an internal, agonizing choice. Does he take revenge? Or does he forgive? Right then, Prospero has this sudden, monumental epiphany. He looks at his trembling enemies and realizes that torturing these men, or even killing them, won't magically undo the last 12 years of exile. It's not going to heal the deep trauma in his heart. Actually, it will only make him exactly like the ruthless monsters who betrayed him in the first place. So in a shocking, incredibly powerful twist, Prospero realizes that true strength is actually restraint. He chooses profound forgiveness over bloody destruction, and that completely shifts the narrative from a dark tragedy into a beautiful story of reconciliation.
Section 6. The True Meaning of Power.
This choice ushers in a completely new beginning for everyone. Prospero looks his betrayers directly in the eye and forgives them for their treason. The genuine, blossoming love between Miranda and Ferdinand effectively unites the two warring families of Milan and Naples, basically ensuring lasting peace for the future. And Ariel? Prospero finally keeps his long-standing promise and releases Ariel into the skies, granting the spirit total ultimate freedom. But perhaps most significantly, Prospero takes his magical staff, the literal source of all his godlike dominance, and he snaps it in half. He drowns his magic books deep in the ocean. He realizes that to return to human society, to truly live and love again, he has to let go of his obsessive desire for absolute control. He chooses his flawed humanity over his perfect magic. Looking back at it all in this explainer, we can really see that the terrifying storm that opened the story wasn't just some cool magical trick to scare a bunch of sailors. It was a brilliant metaphor for the tempest of emotional chaos raging inside all these characters, but especially Prospero himself. The island was basically a crucible, a magical pressure cooker outside of normal society where royal titles meant absolutely nothing, and true character was laid bare. The real lasting transformation in this story didn't happen to the kings or the traitors. The most profound transformation happened entirely inside Prospero's own soul. I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. Perhaps Shakespeare's greatest magic in The Tempest isn't the storm, the spirits, or the spells. It is the idea that sometimes the greatest act of power is choosing to forgive. True strength isn't measured by how much you can control others or how fiercely you can destroy your enemies when they're down. Sometimes true strength is having all the power in the world to exact terrible revenge and simply deciding to let it go. It's a profound, emotional message written centuries ago that still hits just as hard today. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive, and I challenge you to carry that question with you into your own life. If you had the power, what would you choose?